Emma sat on the couch, cradling baby Lucas in her arms as she rocked him gently. The warmth of his small body against her chest filled her with a sense of comfort she had not felt in a long time. Ryan sat across from her, smiling as he watched them. His eyes softened every time he looked at their son, admiration and love reflecting in them. "You are going to be a great mother, Emma," Ryan said, reaching over to brush a strand of hair from her face. She smiled back, forcing herself to hold his gaze. "And you are an amazing father." Ryan leaned closer, resting his hand on Lucas's tiny fingers. "He is perfect. I cannot believe he is finally here." Emma swallowed, her chest tightening. "Yeah, perfect." Ryan glanced at her with a curious expression. "You okay?" She nodded quickly. "Of course, just tired." He chuckled. "That is normal. You have been through a lot these past few months." She smiled weakly, hoping he would not notice the flicker of unease in her eyes. Lucas yawned, his little mouth stretching as his hands curled into fists. Ryan grinned, lifting him gently from Emma's arms. "I cannot wait to teach him everything," Ryan said. "How to ride a bike, play baseball, all of it." Emma's throat tightened. "He is going to love that." Ryan studied Lucas's face, his brows knitting together slightly. "You know, I always thought our kid would have my dark hair, but his is so light." Emma tensed. "Genes are weird like that," Ryan chuckled. "True, but his eyes are different too, more like—" He paused, shaking his head. "Never mind." Emma forced a laugh. "Babies change all the time. He will probably look more like you when he gets older." Ryan nodded, though his expression was thoughtful. "Yeah, maybe." Emma turned away, pretending to fix the baby blanket as her heart pounded. The weeks passed, and Ryan's happiness only seemed to grow. He was completely devoted to Lucas, always eager to hold him, feed him and soothe him whenever he cried. Emma watched from the sidelines, forcing herself to play the role of the loving wife and mother. But the guilt never faded. Late at night, when Ryan was asleep, she lay awake, staring at the ceiling, the memories of her affair haunting her. Jason's face, his touch, the reckless decisions she had made, they never left her mind. She had convinced herself that it was just a mistake, that it did not matter, that Lucas was hers and Ryan's, no matter what the truth was. She had been so careful, had not she? The first time Ryan voiced his doubt, it was casual. They were having dinner when he suddenly said, "It is crazy how much Lucas looks like your side of the family." Emma's fork froze midway to her mouth. "Yeah, I guess so." Ryan took a sip of his drink. "I mean, he does not really have my features. At all, actually." She forced herself to smile. "Not every kid looks exactly like their parents." Ryan nodded, but something about his expression unsettled her. She changed the subject quickly. It started happening more often. Ryan would glance at Lucas and frown slightly, as if trying to piece something together. One day, his mother visited, cooing over the baby. She playfully nudged Ryan. "You sure this little guy is yours? He looks nothing like you." Ryan laughed, shaking his head. "Yeah, I know. I have been wondering about that myself." Emma's stomach flipped. Ryan's best friend Matt made a similar comment at a barbecue. "Man, I thought he would have at least a little of your features. Looks like Emma's side won all the way." Ryan smirked, but his gaze lingered on Lucas longer than usual. That night, Emma lay in bed, her heart racing as she tried to convince herself that it was all in her head. Ryan did not suspect anything. He could not. But then, one evening, she noticed something different. Ryan sat in the living room, his laptop open on the coffee table, typing something with a serious expression. "What are you working on?" she asked, keeping her tone light. He glanced up. "Just some research." She walked closer, glancing at the screen. Her stomach dropped. "Paternity DNA testing. How to check if you are the biological father? Her breath caught. Why are you looking that up? Ryan hesitated for a second, then shrugged. Just curious. She forced out a laugh. Curious about what? About genetics, he said casually. Just thought it was interesting how different Lucas looks from me. Emma's hands turned ice cold. She fought to keep her voice steady. You do not really think he is not yours, do you? Ryan chuckled. No, of course not. Just reading. Emma nodded, walking away quickly before he could see the panic in her eyes. The day Ryan collected the DNA sample, Emma had no idea. She went to the grocery store, leaving Lucas in his care. Ryan sat quietly staring at his son. Then carefully he swabbed Lucas's cheek, sealed the sample and placed it into the testing kit he had ordered online. He had not wanted to doubt, but the feeling had been gnawing at him for too long. Now he would know the truth. Emma noticed a shift in Ryan's behaviour over the next few days. He was quieter, more distant. He still played with Lucas, still smiled, but there was something different in his eyes. She could not put her finger on it, but she felt it. A few days later, Ryan arrived home from work with a large envelope in his hand. Emma was feeding Lucas when he walked into the kitchen, his face unreadable. He set the envelope down on the table. "What is that?" she asked. Ryan met her gaze. "Open it." Her stomach churned. "Ryan, what is going on?" "Open it, Emma." She hesitated, then slowly picked up the envelope and tore it open. Her eyes scanned the paper. Then her blood ran cold. Her breath came in short, ragged gasps. She looked up, her face draining of colour. Ryan's jaw was clenched, his hands curled into fists. His voice was low, dangerously calm. "Do you have anything to say, Emma?" She opened her mouth, but no words came out. The perfect lie had just crumbled. Ryan sat in the dimly lit living room, his laptop open on the coffee table, displaying the paternity test kit he had ordered just days ago. His hands felt clammy as he read through the instructions, his heart pounding in his chest. He never thought he would be the kind of man to question his wife's faithfulness, but doubt had crept in slowly, wrapping around his mind like a vice. Lucas lay asleep in his crib in the next room, his soft breaths barely audible. Ryan walked over and stood beside him, staring at the small, innocent face. He had spent months convincing himself that the little details did not matter. Lucas's lighter hair, his eye colour that did not quite match anyone in his family, the way his features seemed unfamiliar. People had commented on it, but he always brushed it off. Now the doubt had become unbearable. Carefully he picked up a cotton swab from the testing kit and rubbed it gently inside Lucas's cheek. The baby stirred slightly but did not wake. Ryan swallowed hard, sealing the sample in the provided tube. His fingers trembled as he labelled the package and placed it inside the pre-addressed envelope. He took a deep breath, knowing that once he sent it, there would be no turning back. The next morning, he dropped the envelope off at the courier service. The worker behind the counter barely glanced at him as he took the package, tossing it into a bin with dozens of others. Ryan walked out, feeling an unsettling mix of relief and dread. He had done it. Now all he could do was wait. Days passed, and the anticipation gnawed at him. He acted normal around Emma, careful not to let any of his suspicions show. She carried on as usual, laughing, kissing him goodbye in the mornings, holding Lucas as if everything was perfect. But everything was not perfect. One evening, as they sat at the dinner table, Ryan found himself staring at her, studying the way she moved, the way she smiled. "What?" she asked, laughing lightly. Ryan forced a small grin. "Nothing. Just thinking about how fast Lucas is growing." Emma's eyes softened. "I know. He is getting bigger every day." Ryan took a sip of his drink. "You know, genetics are weird. Sometimes kids look exactly like their parents, and sometimes they don't at all. Emma nodded. Yeah, that is true. Ryan swirled the liquid in his glass. I was reading about paternity tests the other day. Did you know they are almost 100% accurate? The fork in Emma's hand paused for a fraction of a second before she continued eating. I guess that makes sense. Ryan watched her closely. Yeah, I mean, it is crazy what science can do. She smiled, but it seemed forced. Are you thinking about getting one or something? He chuckled, shaking his head. No, just a random thought. The conversation moved on, but inside Ryan knew. He saw the flicker of something in her eyes. Fear, hesitation. The test results arrived a few days later. Ryan sat alone in his car, parked outside his office, the envelope clutched in his hands. His chest felt tight as he slowly tore it open, unfolding the sheet of paper inside. His eyes scanned the document, his breath catching in his throat. The world around him blurred. His hands shook as he read the words over and over, hoping that somehow he had misread them. But the numbers did not change. The truth was right in front of him. Lucas was not his son. A wave of nausea washed over him, and he gripped the steering wheel, trying to steady himself. He felt like he had been punched in the gut, the air sucked from his lungs. His mind raced back to every moment, every time he had kissed Lucas goodnight, every time he had whispered promises to protect him, every time he had told Emma how lucky they were. It had all been a lie. He sat there for what felt like hours, staring at the paper, feeling the betrayal sink deeper into his bones. Then something inside him hardened. He was not going to explode. He was not going to scream. No, he would wait. He would give Emma one last chance to tell him the truth. That evening he walked into the house as if nothing had happened. Emma was in the kitchen, humming to herself as she stirred something on the stove. Lucas was in his high chair, babbling happily. Ryan leaned against the counter, watching her. "How was work?" she asked, glancing over her shoulder. "Good," he said evenly. "You?" She smiled. "Same as always," Ryan nodded, his grip tightening around the envelope in his pocket. "Emma, I have been thinking." She turned to face him, wiping her hands on a towel. "About what?" "About Lucas," he said, keeping his voice calm. "About us." She tilted her head. "What about us?" He studied her carefully. "Is there anything you want to tell me?" Her smile faltered slightly. "What do you mean?" Ryan pulled the envelope from his pocket and placed it on the counter between them. Emma's eyes flickered to it, then back to him. "Go ahead," he said, his tone sharp. "Open it." She hesitated before reaching for the envelope, slowly pulling out the document. As her eyes moved over the words, her face paled. Her hands began to shake. "Ryan, Stop," he cut her off, his voice low. "Do not lie to me, not again." Tears welled up in her eyes. "I can explain." He slammed his fist against the counter, making her flinch. "Explain what, Emma?" "Explain how you let me believe he was mine. Explain how you smiled in my face every single day, knowing you were lying to me." She wiped at her tears. "It was a mistake, Ryan. I never meant to hurt you." His laugh was cold. "A mistake. How long, Emma? How long have you been lying to me?" She swallowed hard, her voice barely above a whisper. "Since I found out I was pregnant." Ryan's jaw clenched. "And the father?" Her silence spoke louder than words. His chest tightened. "Jason?" Emma closed her eyes, fresh tears spilling down her cheeks. "Yes." A bitter taste filled Ryan's mouth. "So all this time you knew, and you let me love him. You let me believe I was his father." She reached for his hand, but he pulled away. "Ryan, please, I love you. I never wanted this to happen. I was scared." Ryan stared at her, the weight of her words pressing down on him. You were scared. And what about me? What about the years I spent loving a child that is not mine? What about the fact that I was ready to give everything for our family? Emma sobbed, her hands shaking. I will do anything, Ryan. Please, just tell me what to do. His expression was unreadable. You are going to pack your things, and you are going to leave. Her breath hitched. No, please. This marriage is over, Emma, he said, his voice cold. And I will make sure Jason takes full responsibility for his son. Emma collapsed into a chair, her entire world crumbling around her. Ryan turned away, his heart shattered, knowing that the woman he had loved was nothing more than a stranger now. Emma's hands shook as she clutched the DNA test results, her vision blurring from the tears welling in her eyes. The words printed on the paper seemed to taunt her, growing bolder with every passing second. Probability of paternity, 0.00%. The truth was out, undeniable and irreversible. She looked up at Ryan, who stood across from her, his face unreadable. His jaw was clenched, his fists tightened at his sides, but his eyes held something worse than anger. Ryan, I don't know how this happened. Her voice cracked, desperation clawing at her throat. Ryan let out a humorless laugh, shaking his head. You don't know how this happened. His voice was dangerously calm. You really expect me to believe that? She wiped at her tears with trembling fingers. It must be a mistake. Maybe the lab, maybe they mixed something up. Ryan stepped forward, his eyes burning into hers. Emma, stop lying. His voice was sharp, cutting through the air like a blade. I gave you a chance, I asked you. I begged you to tell me the truth, and you looked me in the eyes and lied. Emma shook her head frantically, grasping for any words that might make this nightmare disappear. I was scared. I didn't want to lose you, Ryan. You have to believe me. It meant nothing. It meant nothing. Ryan's voice rose now, his control slipping. You let me love a child that isn't mine. You let me wake up every morning thinking I had a son. You let me hold him, protect him, plan a future for him, when all along you knew. Emma sobbed, dropping to her knees, reaching for him. I never meant to hurt you. I love you. Please, Ryan, I love you. Ryan stepped back, avoiding her touch like it burned. You love me? He scoffed, his expression darkening. You don't get to say that. You don't get to tell me you love me after destroying everything we built. Emma clutched her chest, her breaths coming in gasps. Please, just tell me what I can do. I'll do anything, Ryan. I'll make this right. Ryan's lips curled into something between a sneer and a smirk. You'll do anything? His voice turned eerily calm again, almost thoughtful. Fine. Then tell me everything, from the beginning. Emma swallowed hard, her body trembling. She knew she was trapped. She could not lie anymore. She hesitated before whispering, It was Jason. Ryan exhaled slowly, as if he had been holding his breath for too long. Of course it was Jason. His voice dripped with disgust. How long, Emma? Her hands shook. It was just a few times, before I found out I was pregnant. And then I ended it. Ryan's expression didn't change. Before or after you realized the baby was his? Emma felt a fresh wave of shame. Before, Ryan scoffed, and then you decided to lie, to trap me into raising another man's child. No, Emma's voice broke. I wanted our family. I wanted Lucas to have a real father, a good father. I knew Jason wouldn't. Ryan slammed his fist against the table, making her flinch. So you let me do it instead. You let me take responsibility for your lies. Emma sobbed harder, but Ryan's face was set, cold and merciless. Then a terrifying calm washed over him. He exhaled, smoothing his hands over his shirt as he picked up his phone. Emma's heart nearly stopped. "Ryan, what are you doing?" "I recorded everything you just said," Ryan replied, holding up his phone. His expression remained blank, unreadable. "And now I'm sending it." Emma's stomach twisted. "Sending it to who?" Ryan's smirk returned, cruel and deliberate. "Everyone." Panic surged through her. She lunged for the phone, but Ryan was faster. He stepped back, hitting send with a single press. Emma's breath hitched. "No, no, no, Ryan, please." His eyes darkened as he watched the message deliver. Too late. Emma scrambled to grab her phone, her fingers shaking as she checked her messages. Her heart dropped. Her confession, sent to her parents, to Ryan's parents, to Jason, to their friends. "No," her voice came out as a broken whisper. Ryan leaned against the counter, arms crossed, as he watched her world crumble. "I told you, Emma. You don't get to lie your way out of this one." Her phone buzzed violently in her hands. Calls, messages, her mother, her sister, her best friend, and then Jason. She hesitated before answering, her breath uneven. Jason?" His voice was pure rage. "What the hell is this, Emma?" Tears rolled down her cheeks. "Jason, please, I was going to tell you." "You were going to tell me? When? After I died? After Lucas grew up calling another man his father?" Jason's voice was furious, filled with betrayal. "I can't believe you. You let me go on living my life, not knowing I had a son?" Emma covered her mouth, sobbing silently. Ryan chuckled bitterly. "Guess he didn't take the news well." Jason's voice dropped. Dangerous now. "Listen to me, Emma. I want my son. If you think I'm going to let Ryan raise my kid while you lie your way through life, you're insane." Emma's blood ran cold. "Jason, please." "You're hearing me loud and clear," Jason snarled. "Get a lawyer, Emma. I'll see you in court." The line went dead. Emma collapsed onto the floor, her breath ragged. Ryan simply shook his head. "You didn't just betray me. You betrayed him, too." Emma's whole body trembled. "Ryan, I didn't—" "No," Ryan cut her off. "I don't want to hear it." He walked past her, heading toward the bedroom. "You have until morning to pack your things. After that, I don't care where you go. But you're not staying here." Emma's head snapped up. "Ryan, please." His expression remained ice cold. "The only reason I'm not throwing you out right now is because Lucas is here." Emma sobbed, clutching at her chest, but Ryan's mind was made up. He turned, pausing at the bedroom door. "You lied to me, Emma, for months, and now you're going to live with the consequences." Then, without another word, he disappeared into the bedroom, leaving her alone in the wreckage of her own making. Emma sat in the bedroom, staring at the half-empty suitcase on the bed. Her hands trembled as she folded a blouse, stuffing it inside with the rest of her belongings. Her vision blurred from the tears that refused to stop. The weight of Ryan's words still clung to her, suffocating her with every breath. "You have until morning to pack your things." Her chest ached, her hands weak. She reached for a framed picture on the nightstand, a photo of the three of them. Lucas was only a few weeks old, wrapped in a blue blanket, cradled in Ryan's arms. She had been smiling in the picture, a smile that now felt like a distant memory. Her phone buzzed, lighting up with more missed calls and messages. Her mother, her sister, friends who once adored her. She had not answered a single one. Her eyes landed on Jason's name flashing across the screen. She hesitated before pressing decline. Another message popped up from Ryan. "Be gone before I get back." Her stomach twisted. She zipped up the suitcase, feeling the finality of it all. Lucas's cries echoed from the living room. Her heart clenched as she wiped her face and hurried toward him. He sat in his crib, his tiny hands grasping at the air. She scooped him up, pressing her lips against his soft forehead. "I love you, baby," she whispered, rocking him gently. The sound of a door opening made her tense. Ryan stepped inside, his expression unreadable as he set his keys on the table. His eyes flickered toward the suitcase, then back at her. She took a shaky breath. "Ryan, please, let's talk." "There is nothing left to say." His voice was cold, firm. "You should not even be here right now." She hugged Lucas tighter. "You cannot just throw me out like this." Ryan's jaw tightened. "I should have done it sooner." Her breath caught in her throat. "Where am I supposed to go?" "That is not my problem." Her fingers curled against Lucas's blanket. "You cannot take my son from me." Ryan's eyes darkened. "He is not your son. He is Jason's son." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "Ryan, please, I made a mistake, but I love you. I love him." Ryan scoffed. "You don't get to say that. You do not get to love someone and lie to them for years." Her knees buckled slightly. "I will do anything, just don't take him from me." Ryan crossed his arms. "I already spoke to a lawyer." She gasped, her grip tightening around Lucas. "What?" "I am filing for full custody," he said, his voice void of emotion. "Jason is already on board. He wants to be in Lucas's life. And you?" He shook his head. "You are going to pay child support for the son you tried to pawn off on me." Emma's world shattered. "Ryan, no, you can't do this." His lips pressed into a thin line. "You did this, Emma, not me." Her legs wobbled. She clutched Lucas, inhaling his baby scent, trying to hold on to the last piece of the life she had built. Ryan reached for the baby and she instinctively stepped back. "Do not make this harder than it already is," he warned. Her fingers trembled against the soft fabric of Lucas's onesie. "Please, don't take him." Ryan's gaze hardened. "Let go." Her body shook violently as she pressed one last kiss to Lucas's forehead. She loosened her grip, allowing Ryan to take him from her arms. The moment he was gone, she felt as if a part of her had been ripped away. She bit down on her lip to keep from screaming. Ryan turned away, bouncing Lucas gently in his arms. "Your time is up, Emma." She choked back sobs as she grabbed her suitcase, dragging it toward the door. She turned back one last time, eyes pleading. "Ryan?" He did not look at her. The walls closed in around her as she stepped out into the cold night. The door shut behind her with a final click, sealing her fate. Emma stood in front of her mother's house, her fingers hovering over the doorbell. She had nowhere else to go. Jason had made it clear he wanted nothing to do with her, beyond Lucas. Friends had distanced themselves, their words filled with judgment and pity. The door opened before she could knock, her mother's face twisted with disappointment. "What have you done, Emma?" Emma broke down in sobs. Her mother sighed, stepping aside. "Come in." The divorce was finalized in 6 months. Ryan won full custody. Jason took legal responsibility for Lucas, but he never forgave Emma for keeping his son from him. Emma was left with nothing. Her bank account dwindled. She worked 2 jobs just to afford the child support payments she was forced to send every month. Her friends no longer called. Her family barely tolerated her presence. Every time she saw Lucas, it was brief. Supervised visits in a court-appointed room where he reached for Ryan instead of her. The man she had betrayed thrived without her. Ryan moved on, his career flourishing, his reputation untarnished. She heard whispers of a new woman in his life. Emma watched from the sidelines, drowning in regret, realizing that the happiest years of her life were gone, and they were never coming back.